Hello learners, welcome to the Swayam course of Microbial Technology. I am Dr. Richa Sahu, Assistant Professor at University Teaching Department, Chhattisgarh Swami Vivekanand Technical University. Today we will be learning on the topic climate control, and in the previous lectures you have learned about the genetic system of viruses and yeast. So let's talk about climate control today. So what do you understand by climate control? So before understanding the climate control, there are few terminologies that we will be studying, like we will be studying about climate, what is climate, we will be talking about what is weather, and then we will move to climate control. Let me introduce you with the topic climate control. So what is climate control exactly? So climate control refers to the deliberate management of factors affecting the Earth's climate to mitigate the effects of global warming. The need for climate control arises from the urgent requirement to reduce the greenhouse gases emission, to stabilize global temperatures and to prevent catastrophic environmental changes. So before moving to the exact mitigation, what climate control actually does, let's talk about what is climate change. So climate change basically refers to the long-term changes in the average temperature and weather pattern of the Earth. It includes both global warming and other shifts in climate patterns over the extended period of time, typically decades to centuries. So what are the causes of climate change? So there are various factors associated with climate changes. First is a natural factor. So natural factors includes volcanic eruptions, solar radiation variation and natural greenhouse fluctuations. So apart from these natural factors, the other factors are human activities which leads to climate change. The human activity is primarily driven by the burning of fossil fuel like coal, oil and natural gas, deforestation, industrial processes and agricultural practices. These activities increase the concentration of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide in the environment. So what are the effects of climate change? What is the long-term effect of climate change that you see? The first is the temperature rise. The average global temperature is increasing because of the climate change, leading to more frequent and severe heat waves. Like you saw this year, you might have seen the places which are naturally cold like Europe. It was the temperature was high this time. In various parts of United States of America, which is primarily colder in nature, that area saw a very high temperature rise. In India also, if you have seen, you or might have just read in the newspaper that few places have seen the temperature up to 50 degrees centigrade. So this is one of the effect of climate change, which is temperature rise. Next is the melting of ice at the polar ice caps. The polar ice caps, the ice are melting at the polar ice cap because of this high temperature or the temperature rise globally. Next is the rise in the level of sea. Because of the melting of ice of the polar region, the sea level is rising, which is causing coastal erosions and flooding, which you might have listened in the news and might have read in the newspaper. Next, the effect of climate change is extreme weather. I mean either a very high temperature like heat waves or a very low temperature. People are dying because of that. Some places there is extreme scarcity of water. There is absolutely no rainfall. There is drought condition, and some places there is flood. So this is the example of extreme weather condition, which is again a effect of climate change. Next is it overall affects the ecosystem of the earth. Changes in the habitats and biodiversity with some species facing extinction or migration challenges is one of the major effect of climate change which we see these days. So here we talked about climate. There are two terminologies that we will be talking about. One is weather, one is climate, which is usually confusing. So what is weather and how is it different from climate? So weather refers to the short-term atmospheric condition in a specific place at a particular time. It includes factors like temperature, humidity, precipitation, wind and visibility. Weather is a specific event like a rainstorm or a hot day. Like for example, if I tell you, I'll say the weather is hot today. The place I reside, I'll say the weather is hot today. I will not say climate is hot today. Climate refers to the long-term effect. Weather is a short-term atmospheric condition. So as I said, weather is a specific event. that happens over a few hours, days or weeks. Climate is the average weather condition in a place for over 30 years or more. Climate change refers to the long-term changes, as I said in the previous slides. So, what are the key components of weather? Like we talked about climate, what are the key components of weather? So, first is temperature, measurement of heat in the atmosphere. What is the current temperature? What is the temperature range for a week or for 2 days or like for some hours? This is the first component is temperature. Next is humidity, the amount of moisture in the air affecting the comfort and precipitation. Next is precipitation, any form of water, liquid, solid falling from the atmosphere including rain, snow, sleet and hail. Next is wind, movement of air from high to low pressure areas influencing the weather patterns and temperature. Next is pressure systems. High or low pressure system drive weather patterns and influence temperature, precipitation, wind. Like you might have seen in the monsoon season, this wind, precipitation and pressure system changes. In case of high and low pressure system, the rainfall and the precipitation, the temperature range changes. Now let's talk about how the weather interacts with the climate change. In this image, if you can see, in a normal weather condition, how the climate changes, how the weather changes. Okay, so here you can see water body, a land, a soil, you can see glaciers, you can see sun. So what happens in during summer season, the water from the water body evaporates when the temperature is high as per the summer conditions. Now when the water vapors after evaporation, they accumulate in the cloud, and when the pressure changes, when the monsoon season comes, rain happens, and you can see the land, if the land and if the mountains will have more rains in comparison to the desert area. So what happens if the temperature or if the weather condition changes and it keeps on changing for a long period of time, it will result in the overall change in the climate condition or shift in the climate condition. For example, if you might be knowing, when 10 years back, the monsoon used to come in the late July and it used to end near about August. So now it is changing. The monsoon remains till the end of the September and sometimes towards the October as well. There was a time few years back we had rain during the Diwali season as well. So what happens and how the weather influence the climate? So climate change affects weather patterns by altering the temperature and precipitation norms, potentially increasing the frequency and severity of extreme weather condition, what you have seen in the calamity that are happening in India right now, may it be Wayanad or may it be Himachal Pradesh. So change in the climatic condition, change in the climate results in the change in the weather. You see extreme weather condition, you see extreme either rain or extreme scarcity of water, sometimes it's extremely high temperature and sometimes it's very cold. So any kind of extreme weather affects the humankind and all kinds of living organisms. Now what are the factors that affects the climate? Climate is affected by temperature, next is humidity, next is air quality, ventilation, lighting and acoustics. Now let's understand the climate change. So climate change, as I told you in the previous slides, is the long-term alteration of temperature and typical weather patterns in a place. The primary drivers are human activities, especially the burning of fossil fuels, which increases the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which ultimately results in the increasing of the temperature. When the temperature increases, that results in the melting of the polar ice caps, resulting into the increase in the rise in the sea level, which leads to the erosion, which leads to the flood and ultimately change in the overall weather condition of that particular place. Let's talk about the global map showing the temperature abnormality, what exactly happens. As you can see, you can see the earth, then you can see the stratosphere, the atmosphere. What happens normally? What is greenhouse effect basically? When the sun rays hits the earth's surface, carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere are trapped, keeping the earth's surface warm. Normally the ozone layer traps the carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere so that the earth's surface can remain warm. Some sunlight that hits the earth's surface is reflected back, and some become trapped and become the heat. Now what is happening today is the greenhouse effect, is the global warming. What is happening because of the increase in the pollution, because of the human activities, these gases, namely carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, is increasing in the atmosphere. More and more sunlight is trapped in that particular layer, increasing, which leads to the increase in the overall average temperature of the earth's surface. So we have talked about how climate change affects the overall conditions on the earth. So you already know that is the climate control is very important. So what is the importance of climate control? Why do you do that? So climate control is essential to prevent the extreme weather events, rising in the sea levels, and the loss of biodiversity. It also aims to protect human health, food security, and economic stability. This is the flow chart of climate control, how it impacts the different sectors, the health, economy, and environment. Here you can see how the water affects the climate and how climate affects the water. Due to the extreme weather conditions, due to the change in the climate, some places you see have a high rainfall, more than normal rainfall, and some places there is a scarcity of water, which ultimately affects the food. How it affects the food? Because it affects the agriculture. And the agriculture practices, because there is scarcity of water, sometimes our farmers all over the world, what happen, they use agricultural practices which are not sustainable. Why? Again, these are all interrelated. Because of the extreme climate condition, there is a water scarcity, the biodiversity is lost. So because of that unsustainable agricultural practices, ultimately it again affects the climate change. Now energy, because of this, the energy resources, because of the non-renewable energy sources that we are using, it is ultimately increasing the greenhouse effect. It is leading to the release of the harmful gases. So we need to switch to the renewable energy, so that this cycle stops. If we use the renewable energy, the climate change can be mitigated or controlled. It will ultimately affect the water. How? Because of the lack in the extreme weather condition, the water, the precipitation would be stabilized. It will ultimately affect the irrigation, overall irrigation pattern, and the farmers can switch to the sustainable agriculture. So this is how water, food or irrigation and energy ultimately affects the climate, and how these climate changes affect all these three. This is a flow chart, and we can very well understand these are all interrelated. And if you want sustainability, if you want to mitigate the climate change, we have to mitigate and we have to work on these three sectors. So let's talk about the overview of the climate control technologies that we have today. Various technologies are being developed and implemented to control the climate control, including the renewable energy sources, carbon capture and storage, and geoengineering. These technologies work together to reduce the overall emissions and manage climate impacts. What is happening? These greenhouse gases are the primary reason of the overall climate change that is happening on the Earth's surface. Because of these gases, the average temperature of the earth is rising every year, in every 10 years I'll say. Because of that, the overall climate is changing. So if we work on this thing, if we work on energy sources, carbon capture and mitigation and storage, and geoengineering, and work together, it can very well reduce the emissions and manage the climate impacts. Here you can see the overall commercial or conventional mitigation technique that can be used. The first one you can see is the renewable energy. The second one you can see is the fuel switch and using the efficient technologies. Next is the sustainable building and overall mitigation, where you can use and you can switch to sustainable options. First, let's talk about the renewable energy sources. Renewable energy sources are the basic, the sources which can be renewed, which are not will not end with time. These, for examples, these are unlike fossil fuels. They can be renewed and they can be used multiple times. So they are critical in reducing the reliance on fossil fuels and mitigating climate change. The key sources of renewable energy sources are solar energy, the wind energy, hydroelectric energy, and the geothermal energy. Here you can see the types of renewable energy source. The first one is the hydropower. The power of the water, you can use turbines. There are water bodies, there are we can construct dams, or even if we do not construct dam, we can use the natural water body, we can put turbines, and these turbine can be used for the generation of energy. In a similar way, wind energy in many parts of the world and in India, the wind energy is very high, so speed of the wind is high, so we can utilize this wind energy. We can set up the wind turbines, and these turbines can produce a lot of energy. This kinetic energy of the wind can be very well converted into electrical energy using the turbines, and that can be a very good source of renewable energy. Next is solar energy. You might have seen a good number of photovoltaic cell all over many places. You might have seen for utilizing the solar energy. This is a very good source, because India, for example, if we take the example of India, is a sunshine country. We have a good amount of solar energy all throughout the year, and this can be very well used as a good source of renewable energy. Next is the biomass. When we say biomass, I talk about lignocellulosic biomass or any other kind of biomass which are starchy and high glucose in nature, which can be either converted into hydrogen or it can be converted into ethanol. They can be used as a renewable energy source. Next is the geothermal energy. In a similar way, geothermal energy is also a very good source of renewable energy sources, and fortunately India and hot countries are or maybe some places of other places of world are good sources of geothermal energy. Next is ocean energy. The tidal energy of the oceans can be used to generate electricity and other sources of power. Next is hydrogen. Hydrogen can be produced either by biological source or through the biological cycle, or it can be generated via chemical catalysis. In both ways, hydrogen can be a very good clean energy source and also a renewable energy source. Let's talk about the technologies of climate change mitigation. The first technology that we'll be talk about is carbon sequestration. Sequestration means capturing and storing it. Okay, so here in carbon sequestration, we are capturing the free carbon dioxide and we capture it, we store it so that it is not released or in the environment. So carbon sequestration involves capturing and storing of atmospheric carbon dioxide to mitigate or to reverse climate change. The methods include biological sequestration, example forest. Forests are a very good biological carbon dioxide sequestration method. These trees can very well can sequester the carbon and convert it into obviously they convert it into oxygen and and a good amount of organic matter. Next is technological sequestration, example is CCS technology that we'll be talking about in forthcoming slides. This is the carbon capture and storage CCS process. Here what is happening, you can see the industry where the carbon dioxide is discharged, and here we can install a carbon dioxide capturing and storage facilities. These carbon dioxide is stored in a container, is sequestered in the container, and it can be transferred to the ocean platform, and here you can see the carbon dioxide is stored in the bottom of the sea. And this can the carbon dioxide can either be captured from the atmosphere, released in the atmosphere, also from the land, as you can see here in this image, via drilling. Next is geoengineering, solar radiation management. The solar radiation management, also known as SRM, it is a technique of reflecting small amount of sunlight back into the space rather than capturing it into the atmosphere, so that to cool the planet. Techniques include a stratospheric aerosol injection, cloud brightening, and space-based reflectors. Here you can see in diagram, it is systematic or diagrammatic representation of stratospheric aerosol injection process. Here you can see how the first layer is troposphere, just after the earth, and then is the stratosphere. Here what you can see is the stratosphere is injected by the CO2 and various gases, so that the overall temperature of the earth's surface can be cooled down. The carbon dioxide which is deposited or which is captured in the atmosphere can be reduced. The process can be seen from this diagram. Now, next important technique of mitigation is urban planning. The urban planning plays a very crucial role in climate control by integrating green spaces, improving the energy efficiency in buildings, and reducing the urban heat islands. Sustainable urban planning also includes enhancing the public transportation, minimizing the waste. How you can see that? Here is an example of a sustainable urban planning. Here, if you can see the buildings, these are the green buildings. They are using the green LED building design. They have the solar photovoltaic cell on the surface. The overall building is using that particular energy. The local food production is there, the organic farming, you can see the industries is treating the waste and then only releasing it. Even the plant, if you can see here, is using the solar power. Overall waste reduction is reduced. If you can see the people there, the vehicle that you can see in this image, electrical vehicles, so there is no carbon emissions by that particular vehicle. You can see the EV charging spaces there, you can see the greenery. The overall building are designed in such a way that they are cooler in nature. The concrete and or building material that are used, the overall design is such that it's cooler in comparison to the conventional building that we have today. The people are using the cycle, you can see there, they are not using the vehicles and they are using the public transport. You can see there the city policies that encourage sustainability. People are discarding the waste, different kind of waste, and there is a vehicle which is collecting the waste. So the overall, you can see the building planning or the city planning which is sustainable in nature, and this is very good climate control mitigation technique. Now let's talk about the role of forest in climate control. As I have told today, forest act as a very good carbon dioxide sequestration bodies. So forest acts as a carbon sinks, you can say, absorbing more carbon dioxide than they release, which helps in mitigating the climate change. Reforestation and afforestation are the two key strategies that can enhance the forest cover and increase the carbon sequestration without doing any other mitigation technique. This is one thing that people are talking about, reforestation and afforestation. If we do that, if we plant more trees, they can act as a very good carbon sinks. How they act? If we have a good forest cover, the forest body, they, as I told you, they act as a very good carbon sinks. They absorb a lot of carbon dioxide. They, via photosynthesis, they release oxygen. Now this carbon dioxide goes to the body of the plant, and even if they decay after, you can see the soil, they are converted into organic waste. The soil carbon have two types of waste, organic and inorganic. They can again be used. So overall, from this image you can see how the forest cover can act as a very good climate change mitigation technique. Next is a smart agriculture. As I told you in the previous, I think some slide, I told you that smart irrigation or sustainable irrigation affects the climate in a good way. Climate smart agriculture aims to increase the agricultural productivity, enhance resilience to climate change, and reduce greenhouse gases emission. Techniques include conservation, tillage, agroforestry, and efficient water use. Efficient water, you can use drip irrigation. You can the farmers can use drip irrigation to conserve water. They can use the variety of seeds that require less water. They can use organic farming rather than using the chemical pesticide and releasing it to the environment. The organic pesticides or organic matter can be used so that the overall productivity is increased. They are more resilient towards the change in the environment or the climate condition. The emission is reduced. So if we move to the smart agriculture, sustainable agriculture, we can help in mitigation the climate change. Now the water management and climate control. Water management is very crucial for climate control, as water scarcity and flooding are two major concerns under climate change, because in some places you see, because of the extreme weather condition, some places there is water scarcity because there is no rainfall, and other places because of the heavy rainfall there is flooding. So strategies include rainwater harvesting, improved irrigation techniques, and desalination. These are the techniques I was talking about. If we do water harvesting, if we do improved irrigation techniques and desalination, we can very well manage water for the climate control mitigation. Next is the green building design. A green building design incorporate energy efficient technologies, sustainable materials and practices that reduce environmental impact. Features include photovoltaic solar panels, natural lighting and high efficiency insulation. Diagram of the green building you can see. Here you can see the solar panels for the energy requirement. You can install, if you belong to the places where the wind energy is high, you can even install the wind panels or wind turbines which can use the wind energy to generate energy, so that you are not very much dependent on non-renewable sources. The building can be designed in such a way that natural lighting is efficient in that particular building, so that you don't need electricity or you don't need artificial lighting for the day at least, so that you can conserve electricity, you can conserve the energy. Why high efficiency insulation is required? The building can be made two types. Either material that are used are such a way that keep the overall temperature of the building low, in contrary to what we use today, or we can use high insulation so that the building is not very much affected by the outer temperature of the building, so that less amount of cooling strategy like air condition is installed. Next is sustainable transportation. Reducing emissions from transportation is key to climate control. Strategies include promoting electrical vehicles, enhancing public transportation and developing bike-friendly infrastructure. As I told you, sustainable transportation is very important, because for transportation, for day-to-day logistics, a lot of import of vehicles are used. So if we switch from a normal conventional vehicles to electrical vehicles, the emissions can be reduced. You can use public transport more for these kind of transportation, for public transportation or maybe for goods, so that if without using the personal vehicles, the overall emission can be reduced. And we can develop bike friendly infrastructure, because in place of using four-wheelers, we can use two-wheelers and develop bike friendly infrastructure, so that the overall emissions can be reduced. So there are many international climate agreements which talk about reducing the overall temperature rising that is happening these days. International agreements like Paris Agreement set targets for reducing greenhouse gases emission and limiting the global temperature rise. Collaboration and compliance with these agreements, there are many other agreements, these are critical for effective climate control. These are the few agreements that were signed in various years. Now talking about the economical aspects of climate control, investing in climate control is very important, like investing on green buildings, investing on EVs, investing on designing sustainable agriculture, or designing use of renewable sources of energy. This is very important, because these are also, see, the cost is associated with that, but the overall climate control or mitigation associated with this economic investment is very much profitable in comparison to the conventional thing that we are using today. Now, what are the social impacts of climate control? Climate control efforts must consider social impact, particularly on vulnerable population. Climate justice ensures that those most affected by climate change are not left behind in climate control strategies. What do you mean by this? Because of the extreme climate condition which leads to the migration of good amount of population. So when the population migrate, they become vulnerable. If it is about the high temperature rise, maybe because of the flood, maybe because of the landsliding or any other climate change calamity that happens, these are the vulnerable population, and the climate control effort or strategy should be in map with these vulnerable population. They should not lag behind when you are designing the climate control strategies, and justice should be there with those vulnerable population, because of the climate change, a good amount of social or population becomes vulnerable, because they have to migrate. Though we have to take care of that, and we have to take care of the living organisms or biodiversity which changes or migrate because of the climate control. So climate control in developing countries. Developing countries face unique challenges in implementing the climate control measure due to the limited resource and high vulnerability to climate change. So international support, technology transfer and fundings are very essential for developing countries to develop sustainable climate control mitigation strategies. Now, innovation in climate control strategies. New technologies are emerging to enhance climate control, including direct air capture, biochar production, and advanced weather modification techniques. These innovations hold potential for large-scale impact but require careful evaluation. So, this is one innovative technique, direct air capture process. What happens is the carbon dioxide that are emitted from the human activities are captured. The carbon dioxide captured, it is conserved and it is transported either to the places where it is used, like for example in the laboratory, it can be converted into dry ice and it can be transported to the laboratories, or it can be deposited somewhere which can be later used or overall mitigate the carbon dioxide emissions. Let's talk about the case study where the carbon capture and storage is used. The Sleeper CO2 storage project in the North Sea has successfully stored millions of tons of carbon dioxide. The technology outcome you can see is the carbon dioxide. So imagine the millions and tons of carbon dioxide that would have released in the environment, increase in temperature, is now stored, and this is the success story which I wanted to share. Here, this is the strategy which the Sleeper CCS site, which is showing the carbon dioxide which is injected and storage at the deep sea. Now, what is the role of international organization in the climate control? Organizations like UN, IPCC and World Bank play a very critical role in coordinating global climate control efforts. These organizations provide research, funding and policy guidance. These are the bodies which are working for the climate control, and they are working together in collaboration with each other to mitigate the climate control and climate change. So, we can also use advanced technology and innovation such as AI and IoT and remote sensing for climate monitoring, because if we don't monitor the climate change, how we are going to mitigate it? So, real time, these are the techniques which can give us real time data, which can collect real time data, analyze the data, and which is very crucial for the effective climate control strategies. These are the examples. Using AI, you can use the biometric, you can use the various sensors using AI, which can gives you data about what is going to happen in next 10 years by extrapolating it. This is one technique which can be very well used for the climate change mitigation, because these techniques can be used for recording the day-to-day data, real-time data, and then we can analyze it and we can develop strategies which can be helpful for climate mitigation in coming years. Now, the future climate scenarios. Climate models predict various scenarios depending on the levels of emission and climate control effort. Like for example, people say in next 25 years, Mumbai will be drowned under the sea because the rise in the sea level. Like RCP 2.6 low emission and RCP 8.5 high emissions, because if the emissions keep on increasing, the temperature will keep on increasing and the sea level will rise. These are the climate control model which can predict what would be the scenarios in coming years. So, ethical consideration, ethical dilemma arise in climate control, such as balance between the human intervention, natural processes. Climate control and global security. Climate changes can exacerbate global security issues, including resource conflicts, forced migration. Climate control measure can help stabilize regions and prevent conflicts, because of the climate change and extreme weather condition, limited resources, conflict can occur, migration can happen. So, climate control measures are very important to stabilize these regions and prevent conflict. Monitoring the effectiveness of climate control measures is crucial for adjusting strategies. Tools include satellite monitoring, climate models and data analysis. And what are the challenges and limitations in these climate change mitigation strategies? First is cost and budget constraints. It requires a lot of money. So, cost and budget constraints are one limitation. Next is regulatory requirements. Third is occupant behavior and expectation. Next is maintenance and operation. So, in the concluding remark, I can say that investing in advanced climate controls technologies and systems can play a very important role in climate control mitigation strategies. Conducting a regular assessment of indoor environment to ensure optimal performance, educating the building occupants about the importance of energy conservation, proper usage of climate control systems and sustainability, collaborating with architects, engineers and policymakers to design and implement innovative solutions. So, today we talked about climate change, what is climate change, how weather and climate change related, how climatic conditions change and what are the factors that affect it, what are the mitigation strategy, what are the strategies, innovative and technical strategy that we can use to mitigate the climate change, and finally the conclusion, how together we can do or we can work to control the climate change. Thank you very much.